be sitting in the Hall of Fame, and the world is going to know your name. Good evening, you're live on Joy 99.7 FM. It's about 12 minutes past 7 o'clock. Welcome aboard to Personality Profile here on your superstation. I love Thursday evenings, and I'm sure you understand why. Yeah. Last week, I was blessed to have the Apostle General of the Royal House Chapel here on Personality Profile. I tell you what, tonight, we're blessed one more time. A double dose of the blessing. Yeah. Welcome aboard to Personality Profile. In the next hour, I'll be having a conversation with an amazing woman. Oh yeah, totally awesome. Yeah. You know, there's a school of thought that being a pastor's wife is very challenging and very lonely sometimes. Others say being a pastor's wife can bring about deep joy and fulfillment. Now, we're going to find out shortly. For the women out there who actually dream of being pastors' wives, in the next hour you would have a reason to hope even more or squash that dream. I tell you what, this woman is amazing. She's a career guidance advisor, she's a marriage counselor, conference presenter, entrepreneur, motivational speaker, revivalist as well, with a prophetic ministry. She's the founder and president of Royal Ladies Ministries International. Oh, that's right. This evening, I'm honored to have in the studio wife of the Apostle General himself. We affectionately call her Mama Rita. But she's Reverend Mrs. Rita Crunchy Ankra. She's my guest on Personality Profile tonight, and help me welcome Mama Rita on Joy. Hello, Mama Rita.
Hello, Bill.
Bless you, bless you. And look, you're glowing.
Thank you.
Who picked your outfit for you?
I do myself.
You did it yourself, man.
Yeah. I went to a typical girls' school.
Ah, which school is that?
I went to St. Mary's Secondary School.
Ah, Mary's.
Yeah.
Just around the...
Yeah.
That area.
The Lavender Hill.
The Lavender.
And I want to give a shout to my president.
Okay.
My Smoga president. And all old students of St. Mary's Secondary School.
The Smoga
Love
ladies
you.
listening. Hey, what's up? Shout out to all of you. Oh, but I must say you're looking good. Well, guys, we're live on our Facebook page, so you can actually go check out videos of how Mama Rita is looking good this evening. Oh, yeah, I know she doesn't joke with her fashion sense at all. But tonight is special. Really, we're glad to have you. How are you, Mama Rita?
I'm fine, by the grace of God.
And how's Apostle General?
He's doing very well. He just came from a trip.
Okay.
And you are preventing me from having a quality time with him.
I can imagine. Apostle General is expecting an apostolic treat. And Mama Rita is sitting here in the radio studio. Apostle, we salute you if you're tuned in. We salute you. But at least I just take an hour of your time, and then we can you can go back to continue the treat. Anyway, so I mean, I would want to know how it feels like to be the first lady of the Royal House Chapel. It must be nice, isn't it?
Would I say it's nice? Well, it has its sides, positive sides, it has its negative sides. First, the job is very, very demanding. You have no time to yourself. People are calling you odd hours. I sleep at 2 a.m. You get people calling you at 3.
Wow.
I'm pregnant. I'm in labor. I want you to pray for me. My daughter is not well. Can you pray for me? I have a problem. Can you advise me? There's always something you are doing. Wow. And for everybody who wants to be a pastor's wife, sometimes it can be a lonely journey.
Lonely journey.
Lonely.
So that school of thought that we heard earlier is right.
Who do you share your issues with? People come to you all the time with their problems, with their difficulties, with their issues. When you have a problem, who do you talk to?
So who do you talk to?
I talk to God. I've always learned to talk to God.
If it works for you, why don't you tell the people who come to you to talk to God?
You tell them all the time,
But
it's like
they don't listen.
they want to see a human being. Some people don't even want to hear you talk. All they want is somebody they can offload to. And once they offload to you, they're fine.
And don't you wish for that yourself?
I do.
So how do you compensate for that?
Well, my husband becomes my confidant, my counselor, my mentor, my role model, my pastor, my boyfriend, my husband.
That's right.
The father of my children. He's everything.
Everything.
Yeah.
Okay, so you earlier talked about the work bit of it, but being the wife of the Apostle General, I mean, knowing the lengths he's gone and the popularity he's garnered in ministry, how does that particular part of life feel?
Number one, you share him with everybody. Everybody wants a bit of him. So if you are not careful, you stay for days and you have either not seen him or you haven't had a quality time with him.
Wow.
So that's one. Number two, as the wife of the Apostle General, he set such a high standard. Very, very high standard. And people expect you, whether you like it or not, to be Apostle General too. They don't know you are different. They don't know you have different temperaments. They want you to talk like him. They want you to preach like him. They want you to be at the top like him. So sometimes meeting those demands can be very, very challenging. He's not there and you mount the pulpit and they want you to, crack the joke he cracks, smile the way he smiles, make the church laugh. And sometimes it can be a bit, sometimes you want to be yourself.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's a bit demanding.
When I asked this particular question, I was actually hoping that you would talk about the rosy part of it. But this one too, you're talking about how burdensome it is. It must be tough.
It's tough.
Mama Rita, there's no joyous moment.
Of course there is.
I want to know,
there is. When on Mother's Day, people come murmuring you.
That's right.
Showering you with flowers, with gifts, with envelopes. I mean, it's fun. When on your birthday, you have choirs singing for you. Some of the choirs sewing uniforms just for you. Christmas, people come. Oh, Mama, happy birthday. Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
It feels good sometimes,
really good.
yes.
Okay.
But aside all that, there are also the negative sides we must look at.
Okay. Earlier when you were talking, you talked about how come people almost always expect the same standards that Apostle General has for you as well. Now, one of the trends that I realize is a lot of pastors' wives are also reverends. So do you automatically become a reverend when you're married to a pastor? How is the calling of Reverend Mrs.? How is it done? I mean, do you also get the calling that the reverends also get, or maybe because you are associated with them, or
I get people ask me this question all the time. The disciples or the apostles were with Jesus for 3 years. At the end of the ministry of Jesus, they found themselves talking like him, preaching like him, behaving like him. You can't be with a successful person and not be successful. If you live with a fool, you become a fool, excuse me to say. When you live with a wise person, you become a wise person. If you live with an anointed person, you can't sleep. I can't sleep with an anointed person on the same bed, under the same roof for 33 years and not learn to be like him. And not let the anointing, the presence, the favor rub over me. So it's not automatic. I know wives of men of God, great men of God in our nation who don't preach. But sometimes, whether you like it or not, you find yourself. It's just like the wife of the president, the first lady. Whether you like it or not, people invite you, whether you can speak or not, to bring speeches, whether they write it for you, even if they write it for you, you must learn to read it. So it's sort of an automatic thing.
Okay.
You find yourself also doing it, and people expect you to do it. So by the time you realize people are inviting you to give talks here, 5-minute talks here, and then it comes to 15 minutes, and then it comes to 30 minutes. By the time you realize you are preaching a whole sermon. And, practice makes a man perfect. As you do it over time, you find yourself,
Okay.
So that's how it happens. But with me, some way, somehow, I've been in leadership. I was in Accra Polytechnic, and I was the SRC president. So, it came a bit easy for me. I learned how to talk as an SRC president. And then when I got married to him, over time, I started behaving like him.
So the calling itself, was it something that you were hoping for probably growing up? Did you ever see yourself in ministry? Did you ever think that you would be mounting pulpits here and there?
I wouldn't say that, but I went to typical Catholic schools. I went to St. Teresa's Preparatory School and then to St. Mary's Secondary School. I was a typical Catholic for so many years until my wedding day. I had always wanted to be a Catholic nun. So maybe that's where it started from. Every holidays we'll go to a convent in Agomeda, where they train the young ladies, girls to be to aspire to be a nun. So it's something that I wanted to. So I wasn't surprised when I ended up becoming born again and then getting married to a pastor. When I got married, I was working in the bank. I worked in the bank for 10 years. Then I was preaching my first sermon in church, and I wanted a bit of time to prepare and to pray and all that. So I asked permission from my manager at that time, Auntie Vayo, wherever you are, I honor you. So I asked permission. I didn't want to lie. I told her, you know what, I'm going to preach. And if you can give me just this Tuesday, it was a Tuesday, if you can give me just this Tuesday, she did. When I came back, I just wanted her to know I wasn't lying. So in those days, it was a cassette. I brought her the cassette to listen to it. Immediately, she heard me, and it was my first sermon. She heard me. She said, "What are you doing here? This is not your place. Resign. Go and help your husband build Royal House Chapel." And I'm glad I listened to her. Over the years, my resignation from the bank, caused the church to grow, caused my royal ladies to grow, caused my personal ministry to grow.
Awesome. Okay. I'm sure there's so much more to you than being the Reverend Mrs. So let's explore that. He was on the show last week. We had a very interesting conversation. He gave me a little bit of some secrets about you. Yeah, he gave me some apple. Now, he mentioned that you are a hard woman. Hey, hard woman because of where you grew up. Choco.
Yeah.
Tell us about growing up.
I think it's a combination of a lot of things. Number one, I'm an Ashanti. The Santua is inside of me.
You're an Ashanti?
Yes, I'm an Ashanti. No, a lot of
100%.
people. 100%.
From which part of Ashanti region?
From Akokeri.
Akokeri.
My father comes from Akokeri.
Okay.
And then my mother is from Wasekropon.
Ah.
But I see myself more of a Gan. Why? Because I was born in Accra. I've lived all my life in Accra. I speak more of Gan than I speak Chi. And like you said, I was born in Choco. You need to be hard. You need to be tough.
That's right.
Even when I was learning how to drive, you needed to be tough because of the chololes and the, lantema style of driving. So you end up, being tough and...
So I just want to assume that it wasn't easy growing up. It wasn't, you didn't have a rosy upbringing. Or was it?
It's a combination. Well, I lived in Choco. But my house was not Choco.
Okay.
You get what I'm saying?
I understand.
I lived in Choco. My father built his house in Choco. But...
What was he doing?
My father was the building manager of ACP, African Concrete.
Okay.
And then my mother used to work with Bank of Ghana.
So you had a privileged upbringing, sort of. Okay.
Yes. But just the Choco, where I was born. And I associate myself with them. I love the place. It's part of my history. I will never deny them. Today, we have a church, Royal House Chapel, in the place I was born. And I'm happy for that.
So did you school there? Which
no,
schools did you?
I went to St. Teresa's
okay.
in North Kaneshie. and then from there to St. Mary's Secondary
St.
School.
Mary's.
And then I didn't do too well in my examination, so I went for World War in Zion Secondary School, and then I found myself...
Do you remember your grades?
Hey! Either aggregate... Is it aggregate 3? I've forgotten how the... It was aggregate 1.
Okay.
Is it? There was 1. How was it?
I'm not sure of that one.
Oh, you did SSS.
So we are timed out the
SSS.
26.
I didn't know you were such young.
26 aggregate 26 and 2. So if it's 1 there, then
No,
you did very well.
grade
So,
1,
okay.
grade 1, grade 2,
Uh-huh.
and then grade 3, and then there was GC pass. So I think grade 3 or so. I've forgotten.
So you didn't feel, but
no, I
you-
didn't feel. I didn't
you
feel.
got
feel.
small.
I got small,
Yeah,
but
no.
the small couldn't take me to the set form.
I see.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you did work in a bank, but
Yeah.
what did you want to be when you grew up?
Hey, you know, when you are growing up, everybody has all this kind of imaginations. I wanted to be a dietitian.
A dietitian.
A dietitian. That's something I really wanted to do.
Where did that motivation come from?
I don't know. I had an auntie who was a dietitian.
Okay.
And I don't know whether the word, I just loved the word. But I have always been good with what to eat, what not to eat, what to take when you have malaria, what to take when you have jaundice. I've always been the type.
Okay.
As a very young girl, I could prepare a menu for babies from first day to about 6 months or till 1 year. You know,
Yeah.
it's always been part of me. But why I ended up not being a dietitian, I don't know.
What did you study in St. Mary's?
In St. Mary's in those days, arts. I was an art student.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then from St. Mary's, where did you go?
From St. Mary's, I did the O levels. I did the rewriting
Yeah.
at Zion Secondary School in Angloga, and then from there, I did diploma in business studies, the accounting option, in Accra Polytechnic, and then worked in the bank, and then did my first degree in my 40, and then my second degree in Gimpa.
What did you study for your first?
My first degree I did entrepreneurship, and then my second degree I did governance and leadership.
Okay. It gives us quite an interesting picture of you growing up. But tell us really the story. Of course, living a somewhat average life in Choco and whatnot. Tell us about growing up. Share the story with us.
Well, I had a very good upbringing. My parents are still married. My parents are married for, I think this year they'll be 60 years.
60
Yeah.
years.
So
Wow.
I grew up with Mr. and Mrs. from the Mr. and Mrs. Family. My father was the building manager of African Concrete. My mother worked with Kwame Nkrumah, worked with Shell, worked with Bank of Ghana. But something befell us. Is my English correct? I know I'm in Joy FM.
Marita, feel free. Yeah, you're back crashing.
And I know my St. Mary's mates are listening. They won't want me to. I know they are marking me. So my father had an accident, a quarry accident. My uncle, J. Stanley Owusu, had a quarry. My father was on leave. So he asked my father to come and help him in the quarry. And then in those days, I hear they do something. They set a dynamite that breaks the rocks into chippings. So my father had set the thing, waiting for it to blast. He waited so long for it to blast. The thing wasn't blasting. So he got up to go and check why it wasn't blasting. Just when he got up, the thing blasted, and then a big rock hit his head. He was in coma, a surgical block, for 6 months.
Wow.
We went from grace to grass. We lost everything. We had to use every money we had, for his medical bills, everything. When my father came home, he was a vegetable. When he came home, he had forgotten everything. We had to now start teaching him. This is fork, this is spoon, this is a bucket, this is plate, this is a pen. I mean, it was hard for us as a family. But he did something I'll forever be grateful. He still decided we shouldn't leave the schools we were to Saito. I mean, it's one thing my father did that I really appreciate him for it. So it was my mom. My mom was taking care of 4 kids. And unfortunately for us, we are all 1 year apart. So you can imagine.
Okay.
At the time, we're all in the secondary school. He was buying trunks. She was buying chobuses, provisions, school fees. I mean, life was tough. So that is when now the choco came in. I had to sell everything to support my mom. My siblings refused to carry things on their head. So I would come back from school, remove my St. Teresa's uniform, sell from bread to sugarcane to charcoal to rice. I mean, name it. I sold everything just to help us as a family. So my mother could put food on our table, so we can have clothes to wear, so we can have shoes to wear, so we can still be like the other children. And I tell you, life was, I mean, I don't want to remember those days. People that we had learned to play with toys, we used to go swimming. All of a sudden, what to eat was even a problem in the house. It's just by God's grace that I can speak English. It's just by God's grace that I went to St. Mary's Secondary School. It's just by God's grace that I had people paying my school fees and for me to be able to finish St. Mary's Secondary School. I mean, it's by the grace of God.
I can imagine. I hear at a point you left home.
Oh, that was when I became born again.
Okay.
After St. Mary's.
And this was way after Daddy's issue?
Oh, way after.
Okay.
When he had that accident, I think I was around. My husband tells me I never keep days, though I did history. And this was between class 3 and class 4.
Oh.
So it was very early, very early.
Yeah.
And I want to say a very big thank you to my mom for everything she did for us. That is why on every Mother's Day, I'd want to celebrate this woman for everything she did for us. So this was between class 3 and class 4. But after St. Mary's, I went to a typical Catholic school where there was nothing like Scripture Union and all that. Then I found myself in Zao Secondary School. Already, I was broken. I didn't know why I failed my examination. I didn't know why I didn't pass. I was so angry with God. I mean, I would wake up in the morning or before I go to sleep, I say, God, let this be a dream. I wake up in the morning, I still find myself in Zion Secondary School. So there in Zion Secondary School, a young man walks into the school and says he's coming to hold a revival.
Okay.
And in those days, Zion Secondary School, when there's somebody coming from Accra to Zion Secondary School, it's like somebody coming from America or UK to Ghana to Accra. I mean, that's the way we felt. It's in those days, it takes you about 5 hours to get to Angloga. You write one letter, and it takes a month for your parents to get it. So I just wanted to go and find out who these young guys, could I be hooked up some way, somehow?
You're looking to be hooked up. I see. So one of those who go for the revival stage, hoping to be hooked.
Hoping to be hooked. So I went to the meeting, and in those days I was hot. I had organized an aluta in the school.
Hey.
So I was the chick of the guys.
Wow.
So I had gone into this meeting, and then for the first time, I heard the message I never heard before. A message about being born again. A message about accepting Jesus Christ as your Lord and personal Savior. So after the message, the one who was preaching said, if you want to give your life to Jesus, come forward and you won't believe me. The Rita Owusu, with tears in my eyes, the chick of the guys with tears in my eyes, the people's person with tears in my eyes, with my hands lifted up, walked down the aisle right in front. And I said, Lord Jesus, come into my life, come and be my Lord and my personal Savior. You know, in those days, being born again and crefe and, you know, isn't like now. It wasn't fun. So when I came home, it was a new thing. New dispensation for my parents, still typical Catholics. So anytime I said I was going for a retreat, I was going for fellowship, I was going for an all-night, they didn't understand me. So I felt maybe if I left home a bit. So I left home. What was I doing? Evangelizing. I would jump from bus to bus, just preaching. Just preaching.
So
just
that
preaching.
is what made you leave home.
That is what made me leave home. And guess the guy who came to preach in Zion Secondary.
Ladies and gentlemen, Apostle General Sam Kratchet Accra. So indeed, she went there and she didn't only get the anointing, but she got the romance. Oh man, God works in mysterious ways. I'm sure while she was walking up front to go and give her life to Christ, she was like, oh Lord, I give my life to this man too. Wow. So that was your first meeting with Reverend Sam Kratchet.
That was my first meeting. My first meeting. And then he was in the school for 3 days. So at the end of the third day, he said people who live in Accra, you know, they have this holiday fellowship in Accra High School. So we could come to the fellowship. You won't believe it. The fellowship starts at 2 p.m. By 8 a.m. I was in the school. Oh, but that's how much zealous I was for the Lord. That's how much I fell in love with Jesus. That's how much I wanted the cross before me and the world behind me. I mean, I'd had a lot of the world. I had had enough of the world. I'd had all the clubbing and all the boyfriends and, you know, I've had all that. And I thought I wanted a new start. So I was so zealous for the Lord. The meeting that should start at 8, the meeting that should start at 2, I ended up being there at 8.
Okay. Now, if you have any messages or questions for Mama Rita, you can WhatsApp us on 0244340437. I understand your zeal for the Lord, but around that time, be honest, I mean, just you and I, what was your zeal for the man also like?
Oh, the truth, that in those days, you know, it was even sinful to think about a man. In those days when we became born again, I mean, genuinely, after the first night, when I didn't get any hook, it was all Jesus. I had fallen in love with Jesus, and Jesus was my boyfriend, Jesus was my husband, Jesus was my lover, Jesus was my everything. I mean...
But Marita is the same these days too, eh?
It's the same.
Yeah, I'm on behalf of the young ones. I'm telling you, it's the same these days too.
Are you sure?
Yes.
With your sexy voice. Are you married? If you are not married, please. I have 3 beautiful daughters, well trained, very educated. They speak like you.
Mama
they speak
Rita.
good English more than me.
This is the year of the Lord. Hallelujah. Somebody praise God.
Hallelujah.
Wow. So it was really all about God, evangelizing and whatnot.
Yeah.
And now you fell in love with ministry.
Yeah, I fell in love with ministry. And
at what point did banking come in?
At that time, that was the time I just finished Zion Secondary School.
Yeah.
So from Zion Secondary School, moved to Accra Polytechnic to do the diploma in business studies. So after diploma in business studies, I got the job with the bank.
Okay.
Where I worked for 10 years.
And how was corporate life?
It was good. It was very, very good. Except that when we started ministry, it got very, very challenging. You know, combining ministry, home, work. I would leave home by 6:30. Right after work, I didn't go home. I'll go to church to do counseling, to take care of my women's ministry. I mean, I was doing everything. And there was nothing like weekend for me because it was a young ministry. Weekend was where we were doing the year and we were doing the outdoorings and weddings and engagements. And because it was a small church, I was part of everything. So it was very, very demanding. But I loved working in the bank. I loved being called a banker. I loved wearing the uniform. And you should see me. I looked so beautiful with my curves in my banking uniform. I mean, I loved it.
I can imagine.
I loved it.
Wow. Well, we're spending a good time with Mama Rita, Reverend Mrs. Rita Crunchy Ankra, First Lady of the Royal House Chapel. Right. So, when ministry became very serious, you talked about it. You actually mentioned how you jumped from the bank one day, went to do a sermon, and your manager says, "Look, this is not where you belong. You need to be in ministry." Around that time, you were probably still doing ministry with the then Samuel Crunchy Ankra.
Yes, I was. I'm actually a co-founder of Royal House Chapel.
So tell us about how this evangelism and doing the work of the Lord turned into something else.
Okay. Out of Accra High School came a group called Showers of Blessing. Showers of Blessing. Mm-hmm. So Showers of Blessing was a group of young students who were zealous for Christ. All we were doing was going to schools to evangelize, going to young churches to evangelize, going to small churches to evangelize. I mean, we were traveling, holding crusades here and there. So that was the beginning of the church. And then over time, we started getting married. You know, we were students when we started. We had all the time to travel. We had all the time for the evangelism. We could never sit on a bus without preaching. We could never sit in a taxi without preaching. We could never sit in trotro without preaching. I mean, I can't remember any time I sat on a bus and not preach. I would come home and fast for 3 days because I had sinned. And we will have all the dawn broadcasts and all that. And we really had time for the Lord. But as I said, you can't continue to be young. I started in my teens. Mm-hmm. Then we moved into the 20s. Then I got married. I started having children.
No, you're moving too fast.
Mm-hmm.
Take it easy.
Okay.
What we actually want to know is which all-night session did he decide to pop the question?
Oh, that's what you want. Oh, you should have told me in black and white.
Because I know you're supposed to go for a concert. What was the name? Crusades and whatnot. So what happened? What happened?
Oh, okay. So we were going for the crusades and the crusades. So this particular day we had gone for a crusade at the Christian Methodist Park. Huh? So after the crusade, I was told in those days he was an Apostle General. Please tell him. When I met him, he was an Apostle General. He wasn't bishop. He wasn't a prophet. He wasn't reverend.
He was Samuel.
Brother Ankra. We used to call him Brola. So please tell him for me. So I was told Brother Ankra was looking for me. Mm-hmm. And in those days, he used to be the president of our group. If you are told Brother Ankra is looking for you, trust me, your heart will be beating. It's either they said they are fasting and you've eaten. Or you've gone to sing, you've gone to do something, you had a dream. I mean, in those days, you had worn some, jeans that was too tight. Those days, no makeup, nothing. I mean, those were the days. So I was told he was looking for me. And he used to live in a place called Kopevi, around Achimota Station.
Okay.
So I was told that he said I should come home to his house. Hey, number one, my parents were even too strict to allow me to, go out after crusade and all that. So I still went anyway. So I got to his house, and he said, we should go for a walk. This is very unlike Brother Ankra. A walk. Hey, with my president. I mean, so he took me to now the overhead bridge. Is it overhead or the flyover of Achimota?
Achimota overhead.
Yes.
Yes.
That's where he took me.
Hey.
So right there. And in those days, I was Dadabi, and he was a Jabba and all that. So we stood there, and he showed me some small hearts and said, if God said this was going to be my home, what will I say? I said, why not? If God says so, then I will. Apparently, he wanted to say something. He started beating around the bush and saying some things.
Oh.
Today, he can sit on radio and tell you and be yapping. Hey, he couldn't talk.
Brother
Please don't
Ankra.
tell him.
Oh, no, we won't tell him.
Hey,
I'm disappointed in Brother
he
Ankra.
couldn't talk.
And whole Brother Ankra.
And then he said, the Lord wants me to marry you. I said, he didn't even say I love you. There was nothing like that. My daughter says she wants some, fairy tale kind of proposal where you go on your knees and you.
You didn't get some.
I didn't get some. He said the Lord said he should marry me.
Just like that.
Just like that.
Raw like that.
Raw like that. There was no romance. Valentine's Day is coming. There was no. Tell him he must celebrate me this Valentine. I'm waiting. So, well, in those days, we weren't meant to say yes straight away. So what I did was I decided to go and pray and then to also seek the counsel of my parents. So I told them about it. They then knew Brother Ankra because he would always come home anytime we are traveling to ask permission, for crusades and all that. So,
and it's been over 30 years.
It's
well, you would get to know details of this love story on the Love Ride here on Joy FM. They're actually going to be together with Adam Knighty, and that's fireworks. What is it, Aaron, again on Saturday? Yeah, on Saturday morning, you've got to listen to the Love Ride, and then you get details of this particular story. But we earlier we talked about how come people say that being a pastor's wife gets very lonely, and you outlined a few things that you go through as the wife of the Apostle General and whatnot. How challenging really is the job?
Like I said earlier, first you're a mother of your children, you are a wife, and the mother of the church. First, people expect a lot from you. You should be able to please everybody. Where you don't feel like smiling, you must smile. Where you don't feel like laughing, you must laugh. When you don't feel like talking, you must talk. So it gets a bit demanding there. They expect so much from you as the mother of the church. You can't be free to wear what you want to wear. You must dress in a way, the sisterhood kind of,
How are you able to balance all this work and keeping the home? Because I know you have what? How many children? 4?
I have 4.
4 children, yeah.
And then 1 adopted daughter. I have 2 biological grandchildren and 3 adopted grandchildren.
Oh dear. So you have a home to keep as well. You have people's needs to meet. How are you able to balance it?
I always believe in balancing. I tell women, if you want to do it and do it well, balance. You can't do it all alone. So get help. Get help. That's what people don't know. Get help. There are helpers. All you need is get somebody you can pay school fees. Let the person help you around the house. If you want to do it all alone, you would grow old. You'll be 30 and you look like 40. Get church members who are very good. Help you with the kids. Help you around the house. Learn to balance very well. God's time must be God's time. Time with your husband must be time with your husband. Quality time with your husband. Time with your children must be time with your children. So some way, somehow, I'm a very good organizer.
Okay.
I know how to organize my life. I know how to organize my home. I know how to organize my events. So this one has helped me organize my home, my church, my ministry, and my life very well.
And understandably, Apostle General is not available all the time. So how do you manage sharing him with the church and all the other responsibilities that he has? I'm sure you also have. You also wish you probably could spend a lot more time with him.
I think I've gotten used to it. I've gotten used to it, and I'm also a busy person. Even before I became busy, I always tell people, get busy. get busy with your children, busy studying, busy loving yourself, busy taking care of your flowers, busy taking care of your dogs. I get so busy that I don't get worried when he's not around. I don't get worried when he comes home late. I don't know whether it's my temperament. I know how to make myself happy. I am so I'm people brood, they worry, they are worried when they are sharing their husbands with people. But naturally, I tell myself, especially if you knew you were getting married to a pastor, that you should have known before entering. If, like me, you got married before the Lord called your husband into ministry, just train yourself, and tell yourself you can have all of him. Just learn to share with others.
Well, tons of messages coming through. I'm not amused with some of our listeners at all. At all. I mean, some people just don't like my progress. Mama, look. Somebody just sent me, Mama, please don't give any of your daughters to Lexus. He has many girlfriends. Which kind of life is this? What? Where is this coming from? I am going to sue you. I will sue you for defamation.
But is it true?
How can it be true?
Oh, but you're a nice guy.
How can it be true? Mama,
immediately my daughters come, all the girls would back off.
No, can they fight?
They are like their mom. They can fight. The chocolate spirit is there.
Hey, not no more. Bukom Baku. That's right. Mama, your story has inspired me. I'm a person who's willing to succeed myself from the worldly possessions, but I'm really confused as to whether to delete the kind of vision I am having of becoming a politician in the near future and concentrate only on Christ, or blend them together. Kindly educate me.
Well, I believe in blending. I believe in our young Christians moving into politics. I always tell people, maybe if I hadn't entered into ministry, if I hadn't been a pastor's wife, I would have entered into politics. So if you have the calling, it's a whole calling on its own. If you have the calling to enter into ministry, to enter into politics, please do. We need born agains. We need people filled with Christ to enter there.
Edmond Awaite says, good evening, Mama Rita. Excellent presentation. Your story is very inspirational and motivational. The role of your mother in your education is worth emulating.
Thank you.
We thank God for your life. The time has run so fast. I'm like, what? It's almost time. Goodness.
You asked me one question, how I'm able to balance. No, not balance. But when my husband is not there, he's a very busy man.
Yeah.
I'm also a very, very busy person.
Yeah.
I'm the director of Social and Practical Ministry in Royal House Chapel.
Oh, okay.
That ministry oversees the men's ministry. It oversees the women's ministry. It oversees the children's ministry. It oversees the aged ministry. It oversees our scholarship project. We give scholarship to needy but brilliant children. We also have a school called the School of Restoration. It's a school for ex-convicts. It's a school for drug addicts. It's a school for drunkards. It's a school for prostitutes. And I'm the director of the school. And then I've also bought 100-acre land somewhere in the Ada Osudoku area, where I'm trying to build, how do you call it? A vocational institute or a rehabilitation center for the school. Okay. Because I get calls from Kumasi, from the north, from the Volta region. We have a drug addict. We have somebody just came from prison, and we hear you have a school. Can you accommodate? And we don't have accommodation. Yeah, so I'm building.
That's a very laudable project, very laudable project, and I pray that it comes to fruition very, very soon. Thank you so much, Mama Rita. What would you want to be remembered for?
Number one, I want to be remembered for somebody that changed the lives of people. Like people who went into prison, came back, and I was able to change them and integrate them back into society. I want to be remembered for the brilliant and the needy students that I paid their school fees. Is it 2 years ago? One of my children, from School of Restoration, I picked from Circle on drugs. Today, he's out of the university with a first class.
Wow.
I want to be remembered like that. I want to be remembered as the woman who had time for all classes of people. The rich can walk into my office. The poor can walk into my office. The lettered and unlettered people can walk into my office. I want to be remembered for the building of Shiloh. After Shiloh has been built, where it's going to be a rehabilitation center, like I said, for all these people. It's going to be a training center, a vocational training center for women. It's going to be a home for abused and battered women. It's going to be a training center for young girls from the ages of 12 to 21, where, I always tell people during our time, by 12:30 we were out of school, where we could learn how to cook from our mothers, our grandmothers. The young girls today don't even know how to cook eggs. And it's not their fault. They close from school at 5. They come home with a pile of homework. Weekends are the same thing. Sometimes you feel shameful as a mother to call them into the kitchen. So I want to have a school where during